My husband's family tried to convince everyone I was crazy, so I recorded them plotting against me. It started 3 months after I married Garrett. His mother would make these little comments during Sunday dinners, how I seemed overwhelmed by simple conversations, how I misremembered things that happened the week before. At first, I thought she was just being protective of her son. Then his sister started chiming in. Poor Garrett, she'd sigh dramatically. You're so patient with her episodes. Episodes? I'd been a high school teacher for 6 years. I had a master's degree. I'd never had a mental health issue in my life, but they were persistent. His father would shake his head sadly whenever I'd correct something they'd said. There she goes again, he'd murmur to Garrett. Maybe you should look into getting her some help. The worst part was watching Garrett slowly start to believe them. Honey, he said one evening after a particularly brutal family dinner, Mom thinks you might benefit from talking to someone professional. About what? I asked, genuinely confused. You've been different lately. Paranoid. Argumentative. Even I've noticed. I stared at him. Argumentative? I corrected your sister when she said I'd burned the dinner last week. She literally served us takeout because she forgot to turn on the oven. See? He said gently. You're doing it again. That's when I realized what was happening. For the next month, I started paying closer attention. His mother would tell stories about conversations we'd supposedly had that never happened. His sister would move things in their house, then act concerned when I couldn't find them where I'd left them. His father would mention concerning behaviors he'd witnessed that were complete fabrications. They were gaslighting me systematically. The breaking point came when his mother suggested Garrett look into having me committed for a psychiatric evaluation. She'd printed out articles about early-onset dementia and paranoid personality disorders, highlighted sections about how family members needed to act quickly for everyone's safety. I was 29 years old. That night, I drove to an electronics store and bought the smallest recording device I could find. If they wanted to convince everyone I was losing my mind, I was going to make sure I had proof of what was really happening. For 2 weeks, I recorded every family interaction, Sunday dinners, casual visits, phone calls I wasn't supposed to hear. I kept detailed notes with timestamps. I documented every lie, every manipulation, every coordinated attack on my sanity. The device was so small I could hide it anywhere. In my purse, clipped inside my jacket, even taped under tables during family gatherings. They had no idea their every word was being captured. The first recording that made my blood run cold was his sister talking to their mother on the phone. I'd arrived early for dinner and was waiting in the living room when I heard her voice from the kitchen. She's getting suspicious, his sister said. Yesterday she asked me directly if I'd moved her keys. What did you tell her? His mother asked. I acted concerned and suggested she make a doctor's appointment, told her memory issues run in families sometimes. They laughed about it. Last Sunday, I arrived at their house early and hid in the pantry while they set up for dinner. That's when I finally heard what I'd been suspecting all along. His mother's voice was crystal clear through the thin pantry door. The psychiatric evaluation is scheduled for Thursday, she said. Dr. Williamson owes me a favor from the country club. He's already reviewed the documentation we've compiled. What documentation? His father asked. Everything we've discussed. The memory issues, the paranoid behavior, the aggressive outbursts. Garrett's been taking notes like we asked. My blood ran cold. Garrett had been documenting fake symptoms? Once she's committed, his sister chimed in, we can start the process. Dad's lawyer says that with a mental health hold and Garrett as her medical proxy, transferring her inheritance should be straightforward. My inheritance. My grandmother had left me $340,000 when she died last year, money I'd planned to use for our future children's education. The house will need to be sold too, his mother continued. Mental health facilities are expensive, and Garrett shouldn't be burdened with mortgage payments for someone who can't appreciate what she has. The house my grandmother had also left me, the house Garrett and I were living in. You're sure this will work? His father asked. Dr. Williamson specializes in cases like this. He says women often develop psychological breaks after marriage stress. With our testimony and Garrett's documentation, it's an open and shut case. What if she fights it? His sister laughed. With what credibility? We've spent months establishing that she's delusional. Who's going to believe her over a respected doctor and 3 upstanding community members? I heard footsteps moving toward the kitchen and slipped deeper into the pantry. The recording device in my pocket captured every word. The beautiful part, his mother said, is that she's actually starting to doubt herself. Garrett says she asked him yesterday if he thought she was losing her mind. They all laughed. Remember how she cried last week when she couldn't find her car keys? His sister added. I'd moved them to the junk drawer while she was in the bathroom. She looked so pathetic, questioning her own memory. The medication switch was genius too, his father said. Switching her birth control pills with those anxiety medications made her genuinely dizzy and confused for weeks. She still doesn't know why she felt so awful last month. My hands started shaking. They'd been drugging me. Dr. Williamson says the medical records from when she was feeling sick will support the deteriorating mental health narrative, his mother continued, especially since she went to 3 different doctors trying to figure out what was wrong. I remembered those doctors' visits. The blood tests, the MRIs, the confusion when everything came back normal. I'd felt like I was losing my mind because they were literally making me lose my mind. Once she's in the facility, his sister said, how long before we can access the money? Dr. Williamson estimates 6 months, his father replied. Long enough to establish a pattern of severe mental illness, short enough that the inheritance doesn't get tied up in lengthy court proceedings. And if she dies in there? His sister asked casually. The silence that followed was deafening. These things happen, his mother finally said. Mental health facilities can be dangerous places. Patients often harm themselves or get into altercations with other residents, especially patients who refuse to take their medication, his father added, or patients who keep insisting they're not actually mentally ill. his sister finished. They were planning my murder. The best part, his mother continued, is that Garrett will inherit everything as her husband. Then we can finally expand the business without worrying about investors. What about her family? His father asked. Won't they ask questions? What family? His sister laughed. Her parents died in that car accident 5 years ago. She has no siblings. The only relative who mattered was the grandmother, and she's already dead. That's why we picked her, his mother said matter-of-factly. Garrett spent months researching recent inheritances in the newspaper obituaries. She was perfect. Young, isolated, grieving, and rich. My stomach dropped. They'd targeted me specifically. How many others have we done this to? His sister asked. Patricia was the first, his father replied. That was our trial run. We learned a lot from her mistakes. Patricia. I'd never heard that name before. She fought too hard, his mother said. Kept insisting she wasn't crazy, even after we got her committed. Made it difficult to maintain the narrative. At least she died quickly, his sister added. The insulin overdose looked natural enough. This time will be cleaner, his father said. We've perfected the process. The medication combinations, the documentation, the timeline. Dr. Williamson has it down to a science now. How many others know about this? His mother asked. Just Dr. Williamson and his nurse, his father replied. They get 30% of each inheritance. It's a profitable arrangement for everyone. Except the victims, his sister said. And they all laughed again. I stayed hidden until Garrett arrived and dinner began. For 2 hours, I sat at their table, smiled, and made small talk while they performed their concerned family act. Every worried glance, every gentle suggestion about my mental state, every manipulation was now captured on my recording device. How are you feeling lately, sweetheart? His mother asked with fake concern. You seem tired. A little, I admitted. Work's been stressful. Maybe you should consider taking some time off, his father suggested. Mental health is so important. Mental health days can be really beneficial, his sister added. Sometimes a nice long break is exactly what someone needs. The code words were obvious now. Time off meant the psychiatric facility. Long break meant indefinite commitment. Mental health days meant the beginning of the end. During dessert, Garrett put his arm around me. You know we all love you, right? He said. We just want what's best for you. I nodded and smiled while internally screaming. Sometimes the people who love us most can see things we can't see ourselves, his mother added. That's why family is so important. We're here for you, his sister said, squeezing my hand. Whatever you need. What I needed was to get as far away from these psychopaths as possible. After dinner, his mother pulled me aside in the kitchen. I've been thinking about what we discussed last week, she said quietly. About you seeing someone professional. I hadn't discussed anything with her last week. I've made some calls, she continued. There's a wonderful doctor who specializes in women's mental health. Dr. Williamson. He's helped so many young wives adjust to married life. I'm not having trouble adjusting, I said carefully. She tilted her head with fake sympathy. Honey, denial is often the first sign of a deeper problem. Garrett's told me about your episodes. The confusion, the memory issues, the paranoid thoughts. I haven't had any episodes. See? She said gently. You don't even remember them. That's exactly what Dr. Williamson warned me about. That night, I told Garrett I wasn't feeling well and went to bed early. Instead, I transferred all the recordings to my laptop and made multiple backup copies. I researched Dr. Williamson and discovered he'd been censured twice for falsifying psychiatric evaluations in financial disputes. I also discovered something else. 3 years ago, a woman named Patricia Henley had died in Riverside Psychiatric Facility after being committed by her family for paranoid delusions and financial incompetence. The family had claimed she was suffering from early-onset dementia after inheriting her parents' estate. Patricia Henley was listed as Garrett's aunt in the obituary. I dug deeper into the records. Patricia had inherited $280,000 from her parents. After her death, the money had gone to her closest living relatives, Garrett's father and his sibling, the same psychiatric facility where they planned to send me, the same Dr. Williamson who had signed her commitment papers. They'd done this before and they'd gotten away with murder. I called in sick to work Monday morning and drove to the best family attorney in the city. Margaret Chen had a reputation for taking on impossible cases and winning them. This is criminal conspiracy, she said after listening to the recordings. Fraud, attempted theft, conspiracy to commit medical fraud, conspiracy to commit murder. These people are looking at serious jail time. I told her about Patricia Henley. We're going to need to exhume her body, she said grimly. If they killed her, there might still be evidence. What about the psychiatric evaluation scheduled for Thursday? Oh, you're going to that appointment, but Dr. Williamson won't be conducting it. Tuesday morning, my attorney filed emergency protective orders against all 3 family members and submitted the recordings to the district attorney's office. She also contacted the medical board about Dr. Williamson's planned misconduct and the FBI about the potential pattern of murders. By Tuesday afternoon, the story had exploded. The district attorney held a press conference announcing the arrest of Dr. Williamson and the investigation into what they were calling the inheritance murder scheme. Wednesday morning, I received a panicked call from Garrett. What did you do? He screamed. The police just arrested Dr. Williamson. My parents' house is surrounded by news vans. I recorded your family planning to drug me, commit me, steal my inheritance, and kill me, I said calmly. So I turned the recordings over to the authorities. You're insane, he said. None of that is true. The FBI seems to think it's true enough to exhume your Aunt Patricia's body. The line went dead. Within an hour, my phone was ringing again. This time it was his mother. You don't understand what you've done, she hissed. You've destroyed our family over your paranoid delusions. I've exposed your family for the murderers you are. No one will believe you. Everyone knows you're mentally unstable. Everyone will believe the recordings where you planned my death. Those recordings are inadmissible. You made them illegally. Actually, I checked with my attorney. Recording conversations about planned crimes against you is perfectly legal. She hung up. Wednesday evening, Garrett came home to find me packing. Where are you going? He asked, looking genuinely confused. Somewhere safe from my husband, who's been documenting fake mental health symptoms to have me committed. His face went white. I played him 30 seconds of the recording, just his mother discussing his documentation and the planned inheritance theft. I can explain, he stammered. You've been gaslighting me for months. You've been working with your family to steal my inheritance and have me locked up in a psychiatric facility. You drugged me. You planned to kill me. What exactly would you like to explain? He sank into a chair. They said you'd be happier somewhere you could get help, that the money would just be a burden for someone in your condition. What condition, Garrett? I'm a functioning adult with a career and no mental health issues. Your family manufactured an illness so they could steal from me and murder me. We weren't going to kill you, he protested weakly. I played another section of the recording, his sister asking about me dying in the facility, and his mother's response about things happen. They discussed murdering me like they were planning a dinner menu, and you were in on it. I just did what they told me to do, he said, tears streaming down his face. They said it was for your own good. Documenting fake symptoms was for my own good. Drugging me was for my own good. Planning my death was for my own good. I didn't know about the drugs, he said. I swear I didn't know they were switching your medication. I played the recording of his father praising the medication switch as genius. You were there when he said that. You laughed. I thought they meant something else. What else could switching my birth control with anxiety medication possibly mean? He had no answer. The next morning, I moved into a hotel and waited. Thursday afternoon, Dr. Williamson's office was raided by FBI agents. When Garrett and his family showed up for my evaluation, they walked into a sting operation. FBI agents were waiting to arrest them. The recordings were damning, but the physical evidence was even worse. A search of their homes revealed bottles of psychiatric medications that matched what had been in my system during those weeks I'd felt sick. They'd kept detailed notes about my reactions to the drugs, documenting which ones made me most confused and disoriented. They found Patricia Henley's medical records in his father's safe, along with records for 2 other relatives who had died under suspicious circumstances after inheriting money. This wasn't just about me. This was a family business spanning decades. In Garrett's laptop, they found a folder labeled Project Recovery, containing detailed plans for my psychological destruction. It included timelines for increasing my confusion, scripts for gaslighting conversations, and research into inheritance law. But the most chilling discovery was a spreadsheet tracking potential future victims. Names, inheritance amounts, family situations, psychological profiles. They'd been planning this operation for years, targeting vulnerable people who'd recently lost family members and inherited substantial amounts. The FBI had been investigating Dr. Williamson for Medicare fraud when my attorney's report landed on their desk. The recordings gave them everything they needed to expand the investigation into what they now called the largest inheritance murder conspiracy in state history. During the investigation, they discovered Patricia's death hadn't been a medication error. The autopsy they performed after exhuming her body showed she'd been poisoned with a combination of psychiatric drugs that would have been undetectable at the time of her death. The same combination they'd been testing on me. But the most damning evidence came from Dr. Williamson's files. He'd kept detailed records of every victim, their symptoms, their responses to medications, their family dynamics. He'd been running what amounted to a murder-for-hire service disguised as psychiatric care. The files revealed that over the past 10 years, he'd helped families commit at least 12 relatives who had inherited money. 8 of them had died in psychiatric facilities under suspicious circumstances. Watching myself on those videos was horrifying. I looked genuinely confused and disoriented, slurring my words and stumbling around our kitchen. I remembered those days as my sick period, when I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. Seeing myself drugged and documented like a lab rat made me physically ill. The media picked up the story. Local family's elaborate murder scheme exposed ran on the front page for weeks. Garrett's father was a prominent business owner. His mother was active in charity organizations. The scandal destroyed their reputation completely. But the worst revelation came during the trial. The prosecutor revealed that they'd been planning this since before Garrett and I even met. They'd researched my inheritance and developed the psychological manipulation strategy after my grandmother's death was announced in the newspaper. Garrett had approached me deliberately. Our chance meeting at the coffee shop had been orchestrated. Our entire relationship had been a setup. The defendant spent 6 months studying the victim's routine, the prosecutor explained. He learned her favorite coffee shop, her schedule, even her favorite books. He created a fake persona designed to appeal specifically to her. They showed evidence that he'd researched my social media for months, crafting his personality to match what I was looking for in a partner. He'd even taken classes in subjects I was interested in so we'd have things to talk about. Our first date, our first kiss, our engagement, all of it had been a performance designed to get access to my inheritance. The defendant's search history shows extensive research into inheritance law, psychiatric commitment procedures, and untraceable poisons, the prosecutor continued. He viewed videos on how to fake romantic interest and downloaded books on manipulation tactics. During cross-examination, Garrett's defense attorney tried to paint him as a victim of his family's manipulation. My client was raised by these people, the lawyer argued. He was groomed from childhood to participate in these schemes. The prosecutor wasn't having it. The defendant is 32 years old. He's an adult who made conscious choices to drug his wife, document fake symptoms, and participate in planning her murder. Childhood trauma doesn't excuse attempted murder. The trial lasted 8 weeks. I testified for 5 days, walking the jury through the entire experience. I played the recordings of his family planning my death. I showed them the videos Garrett had secretly taken of me while I was drugged. The defense tried to argue that the recordings were inadmissible because I'd made them without consent. The defendant and his co-conspirators were plotting the victim's murder, the judge ruled. She had every right to record evidence of crimes being planned against her. During the trial, more victims came forward. Patricia's daughter testified about her mother's final phone call, describing how Patricia had begged her to believe that the family was poisoning her. Another family contacted the prosecutor about a relative who had died in the same facility after being committed for financial paranoia. The most heartbreaking testimony came from Dr. Williamson's former nurse, who had quit after witnessing patients being given unauthorized medications. She'd tried to report it but was told the families had requested the treatments. I knew something was wrong, she testified. These patients would come in lucid and alert, and within weeks they were zombies. But their families always insisted they needed stronger medication. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Garrett got 30 years for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and assault. His parents each got life sentences without parole. His sister got 35 years. Dr. Williamson got life plus 30 years. During sentencing, the judge made a statement that still gives me chills. This court has never seen such a calculated, long-term scheme to destroy another human being, he said. The defendant spent years planning not just the victim's financial ruin, but her psychological destruction and eventual murder. The level of premeditation and cruelty involved in this case is beyond comprehension. The victim trusted these people. She invited them into her life, into her home, into her heart. They repaid that trust by systematically destroying her sense of reality and planning her death. There are no words adequate to describe the evil demonstrated by these defendants. Our marriage was annulled. I kept the house, the inheritance, and the recordings as evidence of what people are capable of when they think they can get away with it. 6 months later, I received a letter from Patricia Henley's daughter. She'd been estranged from the family for years and only learned about the trial through news coverage. My mother tried to tell everyone the family was plotting against her, she wrote. She called me the week before she died, saying they were poisoning her and planning to kill her. I thought she was having a breakdown. I told her to take her medication and stop being paranoid. I hung up on her. That was the last time we spoke. You proved my mother was right all along. She wasn't crazy. They were criminals. I've lived with the guilt of not believing her for 3 years. Thank you for giving me the truth, even though it came too late to save her. I framed that letter and hung it in my living room, my grandmother's living room, in my grandmother's house that I almost lost to people who saw my grief as an opportunity. The aftermath was complicated. The FBI investigation revealed that Garrett's family had been running inheritance schemes for over 20 years. They'd targeted at least 15 other people, successfully stealing from 11 and murdering 8. The victims' families filed wrongful death lawsuits. The psychiatric facility where Patricia died was shut down. Dr. Williamson's medical license was permanently revoked, and several other doctors who had worked with him were investigated. But the psychological damage was harder to address. For months after the trial, I questioned everything. Had my feelings for Garrett been real? How had I been so blind to what was happening? How many other people in my life weren't who they seemed to be? I started seeing a therapist, a real one, who I'd researched extensively and who specialized in victims of long-term psychological manipulation. It took over a year before I could trust my own perceptions again. Gaslighting is incredibly effective because it's designed to make you doubt your sanity, Dr. Morrison explained. Your reactions were completely normal. Anyone subjected to that level of systematic manipulation would have responded the same way. She helped me understand that my grandmother's inheritance hadn't just been money, it had been a target. That kind of sudden wealth often attracts predators, people who see opportunity in others' grief and vulnerability. The fact that you recorded them shows that some part of you knew what was happening, she said. Trust that instinct. It saved your life. 2 years after the trial, I decided to write a book about the experience. Gaslit: How I Recorded My Husband's Family Planning My Murder became a bestseller and helped other victims of similar schemes come forward. The book tour was surreal. Everywhere I went, people had stories of family members who'd tried to have them committed, spouses who'd documented fake symptoms, relatives who'd disappeared after inheriting money. One woman in Denver told me her brother had tried to have her committed after their father left her the family business. Another woman in Seattle described how her husband's family had been slowly poisoning her food until she developed neurological symptoms that mimicked early dementia. The FBI estimated that inheritance-related elder abuse and psychiatric fraud affected thousands of people annually, but most cases were never reported because the victims were successfully convinced they were mentally ill. My story sparked legislative changes. Several states passed laws requiring independent psychiatric evaluations for inheritance-related commitments. Others mandated body cameras for psychiatric facility staff and stricter oversight of doctors who specialized in commitment proceedings. 3 years after the trial, I received an unexpected visitor. A young woman named Rebecca knocked on my door one evening, clutching a newspaper clipping about my case. "I think my boyfriend's family is trying to do this to me," she said, tears streaming down her face. Rebecca's story was chillingly familiar. Her boyfriend had started documenting her episodes after she inherited her grandfather's farm. His family had been making comments about her mental state and suggesting she needed professional help. I helped her install recording equipment and connected her with my attorney. Sure enough, we caught his family planning an identical scheme. Rebecca's recordings led to another FBI investigation and 8 more arrests. That's when I realized this wasn't over. I started a nonprofit organization called Inheritance Justice to help victims of inheritance-related abuse. We provided legal resources, recording equipment, and connections to trustworthy attorneys. Within a year, we'd helped expose 16 more inheritance fraud schemes across 8 states. The organization grew rapidly. Victims contacted us from across the country, reporting similar patterns of gaslighting, fake documentation, and planned psychiatric commitments. We worked with law enforcement to identify and prosecute these schemes before they escalated to murder. Our first major case after Rebecca involved a 70-year-old widow whose stepchildren had been gradually increasing her medication doses to make her appear confused and incompetent. They'd planned to have her declared mentally unfit so they could take control of her $2 million estate. The recording equipment we provided captured them discussing which medications would be most effective at creating dementia-like symptoms without being easily detected. The stepchildren were arrested and sentenced to 15 years each. The success stories kept coming. A young man whose aunt was trying to steal his inheritance from his deceased parents. A woman whose in-laws were planning to have her committed after she inherited her husband's life insurance. An elderly man whose nephew was slowly poisoning him to access his retirement savings. Each case followed the same pattern: target someone vulnerable, isolate them from support systems, gradually destroy their credibility, then move in for the kill. But for every person we helped, I knew there were dozens more who never realized what was happening to them. People who died in psychiatric facilities, convinced they really were losing their minds. People who lost everything to family members they trusted. Last month marked the 5th anniversary of Garrett's arrest. I received a letter from him in prison, the first contact we'd had since the trial. "I know you'll never forgive me," he wrote, "but I want you to know that I did love you. The feelings weren't all fake. Sometimes I'd forget why I was there and just enjoy being with you. I've had 5 years to think about what I did. I destroyed the only real relationship I ever had for money I never even got to spend. I lost everything, my freedom, my family, my future, for a scheme that was doomed from the start. I dream about you every night. In my dreams, we're still married and happy, and none of this happened. I wake up and remember that I destroyed the only good thing in my life. My family ruined my life just like they ruined yours. The difference is that you were strong enough to fight back. I was too weak to stand up to them. I hope someday you can find happiness again. You deserve better than what I gave you." I threw the letter away without finishing it. Some apologies come too late, and some betrayals can never be forgiven. Last week, I got married again. To David, a widower I met through my nonprofit work. His wife had been murdered by her stepchildren in an inheritance scheme similar to mine. We bonded over shared trauma and built something real from the wreckage of our previous lives. The guest list was small: my real friends, his real family, and the FBI agent who'd worked my case and become a close friend. Everyone who attended had been thoroughly vetted. Everyone who attended was exactly who they claimed to be. During our vows, David promised to always believe me, always trust my instincts, and never let anyone make me doubt my own reality. I promised him the same. We're honeymooning at my grandmother's lake house, the one Garrett's family never knew about, the one they never tried to steal. It's peaceful here, surrounded by memories of someone who actually loved me. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't bought that recording device. I'd be dead now. Another tragic story of a young woman who'd succumbed to mental illness in a psychiatric facility. Garrett would be living in my house, spending my inheritance, already planning his next victim. Instead, he's in prison where he belongs, and I'm married to someone who sees my past trauma as evidence of my strength, rather than a weakness to exploit. The recording device sits in my jewelry box now, next to my new wedding ring, a reminder that sometimes the most important thing you can do is document the truth, even when everyone around you is telling you it's a lie. Especially when everyone around you is telling you it's a lie.